maybe 14. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, yeah, 13. So let's start off at the top here. Max Duggan from TCU quarterback. Me and Gladys have him outside our top 10. John, you have him at number 10 overall, so I'll let you start on him. Tell us about Max Duggan.
So Max Duggan's one of those guys where I liked him because he is sort of the very tail end of like a dual threat kind of guy. He can move around well. He can escape the pocket. If he needs to, obviously he can rush. He has sort of that knack for the end zone type of feel. So I like players like that. You know, his arm's not great. He's got a decent short intermediate ball. His deep throw is not super accurate, but you know, comes with maturity, comes with time, and obviously he wouldn't be 10th if he had a ton of spectacular highlight tapes. So at this point in the draft, I start to look for guys that I think could provide fantasy relevance with just their legs as well, because it's hard to find a quarterback this deep. You know, we'll find out come draft day where the NFL values all these guys, but it's just not common that you find the, you know, 6th round fantasy difference maker at quarterback. So if I'm going to take a stab, if I'm going to take a shot, it's someone who can move with his legs in and out of the pocket, throw off platform, you know, all those types of things. And I think Max Duggan does that well.
Can't argue with that. I mean, he did use his legs a lot, and especially like towards the end of the season. I went with the reason I didn't have him in the top 10 is that I went the other way. I went with talent. So I have guys on my list that are pocket passers, but aren't necessarily that athletic and don't move that much. So I didn't go for fantasy value so much as just a talent value as who I thought had more talent. And of course it's going to all depend on where they land. I mean, right. Even with the top guys, it's just going to depend on when they land. But that's the reason I didn't have him in. He's like he reminds me of like a bulldog, you know, like he'll get in there and he'll like, but and that's good. That's good for fantasy. But I don't know. I wasn't that impressed with him.
That's fair. And before we get too into quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, I do like to preface this whole conversation with saying, you know, Gladys is right. It is totally landing spot changes rankings for fantasy for quarterbacks dramatically. Like it doesn't really affect my wide receiver and running back rankings a ton because I usually, you know, kind of rank them off of talent and but quarterback is, first of all, I'm not a talent evaluator for quarterback. I have no idea. And second of all, the weapons around the offensive, there's so many other variables that go into like fantasy quarterback relevance that it's like, it's hard to
just pull up Trevor Lawrence.
Right, like exactly. Trevor Lawrence, perfect example. Trevor Lawrence walks into a crazy situation and it's hard for fantasy. I get it. So I will say that, and especially as we're starting from the bottom and working our way up, we're starting with it's going to be really hard to find fantasy relevance. So I totally get your process by saying, no, let me just go by the best talent. And then maybe fantasy comes. So I like that. I like that process.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these quarterbacks we're going to talk about in the early on here aren't really that great. You know, it's just finding different guys we're going to mention so you guys are aware of them overall. Again, I mean, I have him outside my top 10, you know, purely based on honestly talent. I just don't really see it. He has some cool mobility to him. He obviously has that like a leadership, you know, playmaking ability. But I also thought about that for Zach Wilson. And it just didn't turn out right. And Max Duggan has the same kind of, you know, issues. You know, I felt like he's more of a system production, can't really read coverages very well, stares down his target consistently, and then super inaccurate way too often for me. And so things like that, I just don't really see him having a place in the NFL level, especially because he's even small too, which is not great for a quarterback. So some of those reasons why I kept him outside of my top 10, but he definitely has that mobility and leadership and alpha dog mentality to be a leader for a quarterback. It just, he doesn't have all the tools to really get it all together. So